All right, everybody, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Let's see here. All right. Welcome. This is the Halcyon Energy webinar, and we're going to discuss our wind turbine today and what's going on in the energy market, how it fits together. My name is Nick Hodges. I'm the founder and CEO of the company, also the inventor of the original turbine. And I say original because it's changed quite a bit. Had some outstanding engineers, third-party engineering groups work on it over the past few years, so it's changed quite a bit. Not the original turbine anymore, which is great, improved upon and moved, and that's where it needed to go. We're going to be finishing up R&D on the roof turbine here, it looks like next month. Finally, after several years of R&D, it looks like we're going to start building commercial grade prototypes for certification and pilot programs this summer. Very exciting time and looking forward to it very much. So today we're just going to talk a bit about the turbine, what it is, why it exists, and how that fits into what's going on within the energy markets in the country right now, which is really the convergence of kind of four unprecedented events all happening at the same time. So let's get into it here. So the first thing we're going to look at is the electricity generation mix in the United States. Basically, how do we produce electricity in the country as a whole? And the biggest thing that jumps out to you is natural gas, the blue one in the corner here. It's 40% of all electricity came out of natural gas plants. Um, the renewables are the green section here, the various greens. Record growth over the last couple of years. This year, again, record setting, driven by large installations in both California and Texas, two states that cannot be ideologically farther apart, but they're not building it because it's an ideological thing. It's just a financial thing at this point. It's just cheaper. So big growth in those. The one thing that isn't showing up here is storage, battery storage. Battery storage is on a commercial utility scale, skyrocketing. Battery prices fell 45% last year. So you're going to see a lot of that starting to come into play too on the grid. Nuclear is an interesting story. We could talk about it a lot, but a lot of interesting things happening there, possibly in the future, but a lot of question marks on what it is and how big it's going to be. But everyone is fairly certain that coal was just the rest of the power generation is on its way out, and that'll get eaten up by these other generation sources. So I want to talk a bit about the energy market as a whole. And this graph shows the cost of electricity versus the cost of everything else. Prices always go up, but this one shows how much faster electricity is rising than the costs of everything else. So for instance, from 03 to 04, line was essentially flat. Your power bill may have gone up that year, but it went up the same rate as everything else. But 2006, big jump. That was Hurricane Katrina, wiped out about 20% of natural gas production in the country overnight. And then 2009, sharp declines. That is when we discovered fracking, figured out fracking, and flooded the market with cheap natural gas. 2015, Sabine Pass terminal came online in Louisiana. For the first time ever, we were able to liquefy and export natural gas, which connected our natural gas markets to the global markets. Before that, we were kind of an island. And within 2 years, we became a net energy exporter for the first time in 60 years. Then a ton of wind and solar projects came online. The utility scale, mainly in the Midwest and Texas. Cheap energy drove energy prices down. Again, not down. Your electricity bill didn't fall. It just didn't rise as fast as the cost of everything else. That is until 2022. That's when Russia invades Ukraine. They'd already created kind of an artificial price inflation of natural gas in Europe. And the invasion really spiked it off. And again, we are now attached to the global market because of Sabine Pass and all of the other terminals that have come on since then. So our prices start to rise. But something interesting happened in the last couple of years, and that's here. So despite all the fluctuations in prices, electricity demand essentially stayed flat for about 20 years. It was 0.05% growth per year. And so the kind of the rise and fall in prices for that period had to do more with natural gas prices. Look back at how dominant natural gas is as an electricity production source in the country. It also has to do with kind of at least out west, how energy sources are bid on in an unregulated market. But look what happens in the last couple of years. You can argue we broke out of the trend in 2022. A lot of that was just coming out of COVID, though. But look what's happened in the last 2 years. Huge spike out of that pattern that we've been in for essentially 20 years. That's not, a change in natural gas prices or fuel prices. That's actual electricity demand for the first time growing at significant rates, the first time in 20 something years. And that's being driven by kind of these four, honestly, each one of them would be significant on prices on their own and electricity demand, but all of them happening at the same time is just incredible. And the first is artificial intelligence. You know it, you love it, you hate it, hear about it all the time because it is significant. Talk about an AI bubble, absolutely a case to be made there. But when people talk about that, it's more in valuation of the stocks. So yes, the valuations may fall, but the infrastructure will continue to be built. And you saw that in the dot-com bubble back in 2000. Huge bubble burst in 21 or in 01. Stock prices fell. A lot of companies went out of business, but the infrastructure for the internet not only continued to be built, but accelerated. And that's what we're talking about here. That's the stuff that actually uses electricity, these data centers. And you may see an AI bubble slow that temporarily, but the infrastructure will continue to get built. And that's going to drive demand for electricity and thus prices. The other one is manufacturing, not as significant, but still anywhere from 20 to 30% of all new demand, electricity demand over the next, it's like 10 to 20 years. It's going to be from manufacturing, reshoring of manufacturing, anything that's considered to be either a national security priority. We're also seeing people reshore for various other reasons too. But all those factors require electricity. So the high-tech factories from the CHIPS Act, a lot of electricity, but also just regular manufacturing. Lathes, CNC machines, presses, all take electricity to run and all being built up here in this country. The next one is electrification. You hear about a lot electric cars, EVs. When most people think about that, they think about just regular cars, and that, it's going to grow. But the bigger thing is fleet electrification. If you got an Amazon delivery in the last week or so, odds are it was dropped off by an electric van. Tesla just released, I think, announcements from their pilot program for the Semi. It was about 17 cents per mile to operate it. A diesel on the same route would have taken anywhere from 50 to 75 cents. So they're not converting based off of ideology, they're converting based off of cost. You're going to see that too with essentially, I think taxi companies are going to come back, but there'll be driverless taxi companies, and electric cars can drive for cheaper per mile than internal combustion or ICE engines. And then with wireless charging, park in a parking space, recharge, and then return to work without anybody ever bothering to have to fill it up or do anything with it. So a lot of really cool stuff there. But the bigger thing that no one talks about is heat pumps. So heat pumps are essentially air conditioners, but they go both ways. They can cool inside by heating outside. They can also heat inside by cooling outside. Technology has been around forever, but what's happened in the last year or so, this latest gen made it so that they are essentially coming down to on par in price with regular HVAC and water heaters, but they're 3 times cheaper to run. So you're going to be paying the same price for something that's 3 times more to run if you want natural gas. The other thing was that they didn't work in cooler climates. So we had one of these in Arizona about 15 years ago for an AC, and it worked fine for heat in the winter. Again, these new gen models, though, pretty much going to be using them anywhere in the lower 48 states, barring northern Minnesota in the coldest of winter. So as these things come available and people have to choose between something that's the same price up front, but 3 times more expensive to run in the long term, it's going to be an easy choice. So all of those water heaters and HVAC are going to convert from natural gas over to electricity, and that's going to be really big. The aging grid is interesting because it affects prices, but it also is an opportunity in a different kind of way. So our grid was essentially built out in the 1960s and 70s. Before that, grids were essentially local. So power that was used in Denver was produced in Denver, more or less. Same with Chicago, Atlanta. But in the 60s and 70s, we made a concerted effort to basically build one big grid. And we ended up building three, Western grid, an Eastern grid, and then Texas being Texas, they have their own one. But all of that equipment that it connected the grids was built in the 60s and 70s with a 50-year useful life. And that's all aging out. A lot of it is original. It was built by our parents and our grandparents and it hasn't been touched since unless it broke down and had to be replaced. But the average transformer, the substations, the wire, everything that is between the power plant and your home or business or the building that consumes it was built then. So the average transformer, the things that step electricity up and down, over 40 years, average high voltage transmission line, those are the big lines that you see on the big steel towers over 25 years. The Campfire fire in Los Angeles area was caused by a really old line that swayed in the wind, and the wind swaying wore through a metal clip, and a clip broke and started a fire. So it has to all be rebuilt. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave us a D plus, and we're looking at about a $5 trillion bill to replace this equipment, to repair the equipment, and then to upgrade it. Because remember, we're not talking about just replacing a grid with the same demand. We're talking about meeting demand. That's going to be continued. If you think back about that graph for the electricity use, the last 2 years went up significantly, and that's expected to continue for the next 3 to 5 years at least. So a ton of money to replace not just the power plants, but all of the equipment that has to bring the electricity from the plant to your home. And that's where the big opportunity is. So we can essentially turn cities themselves into power plants, which will either remove or at least delay the need to upgrade all of that equipment that should transport electricity. For instance, there's a power plant in southern Utah. Its main customer, almost only customer, is the city of Los Angeles. So all of the electricity produced in southern Utah has to be transported all the way over across the desert and over the Sierra Nevadas into Los Angeles. And that's the type of equipment that we're talking about here. But if we turn cities themselves into power plants, we can either avoid or at the very least delay having to replace all of that equipment. It also helps us diversify the grid. So you see things like brownouts now in the heat of summer, but cities themselves are producing power and storing that power to be available to the grid when it needs it. It helps us diversify away from a single production source. And this is happening at just about the right time as technology matures. So when we talk about the cost of electricity, we refer to something called LCOE, the levelized cost of energy. So basically, no matter what type of plant you have, whether it be a solar farm, wind farm, nuclear, gas, you have to build it, you have to maintain it, you have to run it, and it has a useful life. So you take up all of the costs of building, running, maintaining a power plant, divide it by the total electricity that it's expected to produce over its life, and you end up with a cost per megawatt hour. And if you look top solar PV, that's large scale solar farms, it's anywhere from $38 to $78 per megawatt hour. That translates into about 3.8 cents or 7.8 cents per kilowatt hour, which is how we're billed. So immediately you can see there, utility scale, wind and solar, the cheapest that we have right now. The two below is wind and solar and storage. The fun part about this is that the kind of the right side of that graph there, that is the extra battery costs, and the extra battery costs have actually fallen about 45% last year alone. And this isn't fully reflected in this data here. So I think when the new report comes out this summer, you're going to see that fall into kind of the area of the one below that, and that's gas combined cycle. And gas combined cycle is what people refer to as natural gas power plants. So when someone talks about gas plants, gas power plants, this is what they're talking about. So you're going to start to see that move into that territory. But the one below it is the one we're interested in, and that's rooftop solar, so rooftop energy. It's a wide range, and that's because all the way on the right at $217, that's 21.7 cents per kilowatt hour. That would be just a couple of panels installed on a house in the middle of nowhere in a highly regulated state. So a lot of extra costs associated with that. On the left there, looking at $81 or 8.1 cents per kilowatt hour, that is going to be a large installation on a large roof. So think a warehouse, a factory, big flat roof, a lot of solar panels, cheaper per installation. So that's what we are looking at over there. And our turbine is targeted towards the left half of that bar. We're still in R&D, but the numbers are looking really good for us right now. The two below I'll mention just briefly: nuclear and gas peaking. Nuclear is nuclear energy. Our plants are already built, but there's a lot of talk about building new plants. New plants are looking at about in there somewhere, possibly lower. It looks like there's a lot of money going into infrastructure, so you could see nuclear plants fall. I don't know by how much, but get cheaper with the new SMRs anyways. Gas peaking, though, that one is a gas plant, but it's not very efficient. And most of the time they just sit around and they not doing anything. They only turn on in, say, the heat of summer or the depth of winter when people want to run electric space heaters, where all of a sudden power usage spikes. They can turn on these gas peakers, they ramp up really fast, produce a bunch of electricity, and then they shut them off when the cycle passes. These are what's ripe for disruption. So when we talk about turning cities into power plants with wind, solar, and storage, this is the big one that we're looking to disrupt. It's very expensive, sits around unused for most of the time. And yeah, this is some great opportunity for us. So why then don't you see wind turbines on rooftops in towns and cities? And the answer is it's actually very difficult to get a turbine to survive on top of a roof. And that's because when wind hits the side of a building, it turns up, accelerates, and compresses. And then it peaks over the edge of the roof where the wind turbine would sit. Well, that air is also very turbulent. So you have very high speed, compressed, turbulent air. And if you put a regular turbine up there, it'll destroy it. It'll shatter the blades, it'll catch the turbine on fire, all sorts of bad things. So we have solved that problem. We believe we've solved that problem by putting the blade inside of a shroud, hiding it. It solves a visual problem of visual pollution, of not seeing something spinning on a rooftop everywhere you go. People find it obnoxious, but it also helps with the issue of safety. It's a somewhat self-limiting factor through turbulence and air handling, which we'll talk about in a second. But it also covers the blade so it can't be run into by people that might be up there, or birds, wildlife. It's also been shown to reduce noise. It interferes with the physics at the blade tips that produce the swooshing sound of air turbines, which are wind turbines, which is actually quite loud. But that last one is safety. So what we're talking about, or air handling, what we're talking about with that turbulence, the shell, we believe, if done right, also has that ability to help handle some of that turbulence and put that air onto that fast-moving air onto a blade specifically designed to receive it. And the power there is with how electricity is produced relative to wind speed. So it's velocity cubed. So when velocity increases, it doesn't increase power linearly, it's cubically. So for instance, at 10 meters per second, 10 cubed is 1,000. But if you increase wind speed 50%, and literature shows wind speeds can increase anywhere from 10 to 50%. At 50%, it becomes 15 meters per second, and 15 cubed is over 3,300. So you're not talking about a 50% increase in power, you're talking about over 3 times the power. And that's kind of the magic of the rooftop wind turbine. But it's a problem that's difficult to solve because of what we're talking about, the increased wind speed and turbulence. So that's the problem that we believed we solved by hiding the blade behind a shroud, and a shroud specifically designed to handle that fast-moving turbulent air. So what we are looking at ahead is pilots this summer. We're still at the end of R&D. Our research partner is CRG Defense. They're an aeronautical prototyping firm that does contracts mainly with the US Air Force. They take on some civilian contracts, and we're working with them. They are redesigning the turbine and upsizing it to make it a large commercial version, which we'll talk about in a second. And there's, I think, an enormous amount of opportunity ahead, and that's indicated in the amount of the types of response and the amount of response we've gotten from our target market, which is the installers. So the people who are out there installing rooftop energy, who are installing battery power, people like that, have reached out to us. We've done no marketing, no sales of any kind outside of these investment offerings. And from that alone, we've had over 2,900 installers who have reached out to us, again, without marketing or sales, who want to install our turbine for their customers. They see it as a value add for their customers. They see it as a value add for their business. Put out a limited pilot request for pilots for the summer. I have anywhere from probably 40 to 80 by now. The slide is a little bit older. People who I believe would be qualified partners. We're not going to do that many. It'd be too expensive, but it's just a demonstration of the kind of product market fit that we believe we've had. And so why does that matter? It matters because it's a giant market. So rooftop energy, which right now is essentially rooftop solar, is 63 billion in 2024. I haven't seen data for 25 from these guys, but it's a growing market. The thing is we don't necessarily compete with solar panels. So for instance, on a flat roof, all the solar panels go in the middle. Ours specifically goes on the edge where you wouldn't put panels in the first place. On a sloped roof, you put panels on a south-facing roof. Ours goes on the crest of the roof. So we can grow the market together rather than just stealing market share. And I think there's a very clear path to well into 9 figures of revenue for the company. Who else out there is trying to do this? Who's trying to beat us? There are 2 companies that are, I think, the closest to what we're trying to do. If you look for rooftop wind, you're going to find a lot of different solutions still in development, though, because it's a very difficult problem to solve for the reasons we've talked about. But I think Arrowmine and Ventum are doing the best job at it, and they're closest to us. Arrowmine, they were, I think, advertising their turbine at around 5 kilowatts. Ventum was between 2 and 3. Ours is targeted at 11. So clearly positioned to be the market leader for high power use for large buildings, large rooftops, things like data centers, warehouses, grocery stores, strip malls, apartments, any large flat roofed building, Home Depot, Target, you name it. So that is where we're positioning ourselves. That's how we have differentiated ourselves from the crowd. These large companies with strong commitments to renewable energy and deep pockets. That's where we're targeting our initial turbine. After this, we plan to release a smaller one for the residential market. It's a large market. A lot of our installers do both in commercial and residential installations, and the residential is key. I built the original turbine for my house, so it's definitely on the list. Just this initial turbine was targeted at that large high-end user. And that's where we're headed. Flower turbines is interesting to put them on. They're not really close to what we do, but they had some designs that were pretty large, even though I don't think they're in market for the large ones yet. All right, so the team. It's a very exciting time for the team. I'm the founder and CEO. I was formerly a CFO of a company that did 25 million. I was on track to do 25 million the year I left in the outdoor consumer goods space. Emil has been around advising me for the last maybe 10, 12 years, something like that. He owned a consulting firm for about 30 years, had a few different specialties, but a couple of them were high growth companies and building executive teams. And then Brandon Bingham is our advisor. So when we're talking about before 2,900 installers, the plan is to, during pilots and certifications, which are coming, work with those 2,900 installers to onboard them during that time. Build sales materials, training materials, installation materials, co-marketing materials, and permitting materials, and get to a place by the time we're ready to go to market, we already have a built-in distribution network waiting essentially just to take orders. And that's where Brandon comes in place. I think the biggest problem is not going to be necessarily customer acquisition. It's going to be managing those customers on the sales aspect, and then operations. And that's where Brandon's really expertise is in both sales, but more in manufacturing and supply chain, Six Sigma, Lean, all of that. That's his space. So that's where I think it's crucial we have someone like him on board. The more exciting thing for me is that I've been doing this kind of more or less day-to-day myself for the last few years. We've outsourced everything, engineering, marketing, accounting, to keep things as lean as we could, so we could adapt and move as things, opportunities present themselves or changed. That's ending this year. So I think this year we'll build out an actual executive team, get some VC backing, and build out a team. I think it's going to be fantastic. I am very excited to not just be doing this by myself, but to have other people taking large portions of the work. So that is us. Again, trying to solve the problem of rooftop wind energy. Utility scale, there's something called the Holy Trinity. It's wind, solar, and storage. You got all of those on the utility scale, but rooftop, you only got two, solar and storage. This is the missing piece. People are hungry for it on the commercial side. People are hungry for it on the residential side. Solars are hungry for it on both commercial and residential. I think it's going to be a right place, right time, right product moment. And yeah, I cannot be more excited. What's happening in the market too is only driving things with these kind of four just incredible things all happening at once. Incredible problems coming up, but also opportunities for companies that have the right product in the right time. So if you have any questions, you can email me. My email is up there. You can invest at the link there, startengine.com offering Halcyon Energy, or you can just Google Start Engine Halcyon Energy to get to the campaign. There's more information there, different information. There's a little video you can watch, and you can make an investment there. If you like to invest, but just have a few questions, want to have a conversation, grab some time on my calendar at the link there on the bottom, calendly.com. Grab a time that works for you, and it helps me plan my day too, and we can chat about anything. But other than that, I appreciate everyone being here. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions, but otherwise I look forward to you joining the community as an investor. I think good things are ahead, and more importantly, we can support our mission to change energy for the better. And that's what matters most. So thank you so much, and I hope you all have a great day.